First of all, I would like to ask all of us I would like to say a small prayer first before we begin. Om Sahana Wawatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha Hari Om. First of all, namaskar to all of you distinguished participants who've joined in this talk today. And I would like to first thank Sri Jan Foundation, especially to Sri Rahul Devan, for inviting me. We were supposed to meet, I think, a year ago in Delhi, but when I was in Delhi, I couldn't find the time to meet all of you, but this is good. At least this is happening. And I would like to also share with you what is Sanatana Dharma in Indonesia. I didn't use the word Hinduism because Hindu is not ism, but Hindu Dharma. Dharma refers to a set of natural laws which have been there since time immemorial. Therefore, I will be sharing what is and the situations in Sanatana Dharma in Indonesia. First of all, I would also like to thank my revered and beloved Guruji Maharishi Anand Krishna for introducing me and exposing me to this understanding and reminding me of my cultural roots, because otherwise I would have been lost. As I have written in my short write-up for this talk, Indonesia is actually the largest Muslim population in the whole world. However, in our daily lives, the Sanatana Dharma still gives color to our everyday life. Either it is through celebrations, through our customs, to the way we greet each other. It is still part of it. And therefore, I would like to share several slides to show you how is Sanatana Dharma in Indonesia. So, as you see in this picture, the picture of people celebrating, actually this is a tradition of celebrating the harvesting in the part of where I come from, of West Java. I'm from what we call the Sunda Island. I will explain to you what is Sunda Island. And these are the native people who are carrying their offerings to Devi Sri. Of course, there's another name in the region where I come from. Devi Sri is called Nyi Pohaci Sanghyang Asri. And in other parts of Indonesia, it's called Sri Devi. Sri Devi, Devi Sri. Devi Sri is actually one of the forms of Lakshmi Ma. And as we all know in Bharat, that another form of Lakshmi is actually Sri Devi. So in Bharat is Sri Devi, and in Indonesia is Devi Sri. And it is known throughout. And up until now, we always offer to Devi Sri, if not only for harvesting time, but if we relate it to welfare, wealth, and all that, it is always regarded towards Devi Sri. And I would like to show you other pictures also. As you see here, the next picture, this is called Sekaten. And you see again the people carrying offerings, and there is also rice fields. So we're always surrounded by rice fields because actually Indonesia is an agrarian society. We produce lots of grains, it used to be. And you see also this offering that looks like a mountain consisting of vegetables. This is not another celebration of the harvesting, actually. What's interesting, Sekaten is celebrated in Central Java at the day of the birth of the Prophet Muhammad. And yet you see they're offering this in a tradition like the Sanatan Dharmic values, the people of the Sanatan, and also like the Hindu traditions. And if you see that mountain shape, the offerings, it is actually also depicting linga. It is so interesting. And to the first picture again, these people are called the Sunda Wiwitan. Wiwitan in itself also means Sanatan. And these are the values that we still believe up to this date. There are so many similarities that we find between India and Indonesia. One of them, I'm sure you all are aware of Gatot Kaca. So I call this the Gatot Kaca factor. He's the very well-known superhero of Indonesia. So instead of youth now always referring to Captain America or Iron Man and all that, so we do have our local superhero of Indonesia. And the philosophy of Indonesians are actually based on Mahabharata and Ramayana. However, Gatot Kaca in India, in Bharat, you call it Gatot Kaca, but in Indonesia, you call it Gatot Kaca, is the most famous character besides Krishna and Arjuna, we call it. We believe that Gatot Kaca comes from the archipelago that you call now Indonesia, right? And when Bhim and the Pandavas were expelled, and then they were roaming around the forest, and they reached to this part of the country, and then Bhim married Hidimba, and this is Gatot Kaca. Indonesians are very proud to name their sons by the name Gatot, because Gatot means someone who is full of muscles and someone who is diligent. However, I have not heard an Indian who named their boy after Gatot. So you see the difference. Maybe because we believe that Gatot Kaca is from this part of the country that we name our children Gatot. Another one is this. This is the statue of the story of Samudra Mantan. It is very famous throughout Southeast Asia. The picture, the statue is actually taken, it is now in Swarnabhumi Airport in Thailand. And when I traveled to Cambodia and Vietnam, you will find many statues of the stories of Samudra Mantan. Even here in Indonesia, the story of Samudra Mantan is very well known. Another one, Meru. We also have Mount Meru in Indonesia. It is located in central Java. It is also believed that it is the center of the Jambudvipa. If you see the map of Indonesia, it is actually a ring of fire. It is the highest volcanic activities in the whole world. And so therefore there are many earthquakes and all that. And the people prayed that there should be a stabilization. So Meru is there to stabilize the earth. Therefore, the leaders during that time in Indonesia, even until now the title is there, still there, they are called Paku Buwono or Paku Alam. Paku means nail, so that or who stabilizes the world. So how come we find all these similarities between India or Bharat and Indonesia? It is because we derive from the same Sindhu Sunda Saraswati civilization. I will explain to you how this happens. You see, history has changed everything. Many things happen. And this was the map of the world. well, actually not the whole entire world right now that we see here, we do have the common heritage. All the picture that is in the color of this bluish aquamarine, those are the parts of the land that has sunken, and the gray areas are the land that is still present there. So I took this from Guruji's book, Wisdom of Sundaland, and there is a quote from Professor Aricio Nunes dos Santos. He says that the archaeological evidence confirms the origin of civilization and even of humanity itself in the Indies, that is India and Indonesia. They also believe that actually Southeast Asia is the source of the elements of Western civilization, and it is written there in the Wisdom of Sundaland. This study was done by Professor Stephen Oppenheimer. He is a British geneticist and expert of DNA studies. Interestingly, we have found also in Bali, when they did a study on the genetics of the Balinese, there is a trace of the what we call now the Indian blood is there. So it is most related. So it is not like Africa or what they say right now, what they've been saying right now, the theory of genetics. It is all in the same blood. And here I come to explain about where the word Sunda comes from. If you see to the left of the picture, what do you see it as? It is shaped as an elephant trunk, right? And this was around 25,000 BC to 14,000 BC. But many things has happened throughout that time that caused the map to look like the map on the right one. So the right picture is what we see, the present Sundaland actually. So one of the example is like from the new technologies throughout satellite pictures and archaeological findings prove that there was no such thing as cultural invasion and colonization. What we find here in Indonesia and what we find there in India, it is not because India has invaded Indonesia or colonized Indonesia, or Indonesia has invaded India or colonized, but it is because we were all one. So we do share the same Samskriti. And to better understand this history of Sundaland, so this large landmass submerged by rising sea levels between 15,000 and 3,000 BC. And Sunda is the word actually comes from Prakrit languages, that means elephant trunk. So as the result, over a period of maybe 9,000 years before the gradual submergence of most of its landmass, the peoples of Sundaland migrated to safer places, which means they go to the higher land. It is interesting. We have many beliefs, many philosophies that are not coincidental, but actually it is because we are one and the same. For instance, there's this ancient poem from an ancient Sundanese wisdom where I come from, where we regard nature as a manifestation of God, and that we respect the mountains, we respect the trees, and we shall do no harm to them. Like it says here, the mountains, it may not be destroyed, the rivers may not be polluted, the ancestral injunction should not be forgotten. Revere trees and revere the forest, pose no harm to any of them, otherwise all living beings shall certainly suffer. So there has always been this kind of wisdom in our ancestors. However, the modern world seems to forget all that. in 2008, Guruji and I attended a meeting in the UN in New York. It was about climate change. You know, everyone was presenting their papers and their discoveries and all that. So there came the turn of a indigenous Native American Indian. I think he was from Brazil. And it was funny what he said. He said, all of you spend so much money in doing all these researches and all these discoveries, which actually our ancestors have known it for thousands and thousands of years ago. All of this climate change happened, it's because we have destroyed the nature. We have been so unkind to Earth. And this is what's happening also now with COVID, with the pandemic. We see that now we have to be locked up in our own houses because the tendency now is we lock up animals. It's always like a karmic cycle that is happening to all of us. And this is the time to learn. And all these pandemics is, of course, has been also predicted by our ancestors. If we mistreat the nature, if we mistreat the living beings, we shall certainly suffer. And this is what we're facing right now. However, the good side of the COVID is now we are breaking boundaries. Like instance for these meetings, if there were no COVID, maybe I have to go to India to be able to speak in this in front of the Sangam talk. But now we can do it through Zoom, and there are no more barriers between countries. That is a plus point of it. And another point, the ancient wisdom of Dvipantara. Dvipantara is the Indonesian archipelago. We also do have the belief of Tatvamasi. If you see in the picture, there's this triangle, a picture of the existence and the human beings and nature. It says Manunggaling Kawula lan Gusti. It is actually Tatvamasi, Soham. And this has been there since ages ago. And the square at the very bottom, it is actually the Dvipantara version of Loka Sangraha. It is believed by the Javanese, by the Sundanese, by the Balinese, and also in other parts of the archipelago. In Bali, it is mostly well known by the term Trihita Karana. Actually, this word was created in the 1960s, but the concept has been there for a long time. There is the Palamahan, Pamongan, Parahyangan. It is to respect the Brahma, the existence, the Devas, and then Pamongan is the respect to one another, humankind, human beings, Pamongan is to the the living beings, yeah, the living beings, and the Parahyangan is towards the gods, right, the existence. This is the concept of Trihita Karana, which is actually about Loka Sangraha. So we all have that, the same thing, and it is coloring in our everyday lives. And we believe that even the Sunda Wiwitan and the Kaharingan, this is another one also from Kalimantan, and many others, the Kejawen from Java, they all embrace and live throughout the philosophy of Sanatana Dharma. So there is no need to actually convert because they are actually already Hindus. And another interesting fact is also, we do also have indigenous yoga scriptures that are found in Indonesia. These are ancient scripts that have been discovered by Professor Raghuvir from India. And he found that the inscriptions were in the local writings, the ancient writings, but actually people did not understand what was written on it, because they keep on reading it, but they couldn't make out the meaning of it. But when Professor Raghuvir studied it, it was actually in the language of Sanskrit and some Prakrit languages. And thanks to him, that Indonesia has been able to discover most and translate most of the ancient scriptures. I think around 2 years ago, we met Professor Lokesh Chandra, who is the son of Professor Raghuvir, and we discussed about these scriptures, and he was thankful to us, especially to Guruji, that his father's works have been revived. And if you see me wearing this scarf, it is actually called batik. I'm sure in Bharat also they have batik. And the patterns in batik, it is actually very philosophical also, that has the values of the Sanatana Dharma. It is not just merely art and beauty and all that, but it's got meanings. Since a very long time, of course, the word Hindu was not there in the scriptures, and especially in the ancient scriptures that are available in the archipelago. It is always written the Shiva Tattva and the Jinna Tattva. All these beliefs are the ones that are, that was all around throughout the archipelago, and the temples, and they build all that. One thing that is very interesting, actually, if you go to the temples in Indonesia, the steps are so high, yeah, that it seems that it's not made for Indonesian bodies, because Indonesian bodies were now short, right? We can call it short. I mean, Indians are taller. Unless in the newer generation, they're now getting taller. I remember there was a book that I read about an Indonesian history that was written by a German historian. When the first Europeans that came to Indonesia, they discovered that the people were actually tall and very big built. And I would like to connect it to Gatot Kaca, because Gatot Kaca is known for his build body, big build up. But then if you see like Indonesians now, hey, we're small. How can I relate to Gatot Kaca? But if we go back to history, actually we can. Because the German historian was mentioning the Indonesians were so big and tall and strong that they can carry 4 sacks of grains of rice just by on his own. However, with the colonization and the famine that has been going on, I guess a lot of the older generations has perished, and we're left with these small bodies. Interesting fact also, when we greet each other, our custom is to fold hands like namaskar. This is the tradition that we do, and it is happening, especially in Bali. Yes, they still do that. And in my part of the place, from West Java, we greet each other with namaskar. But now, of course, mostly are replaced by, shaking the hands and kissing the back of the hand, especially the elder people. But this is not our tradition. Our tradition has always been in Anjali Mudra, wishing namaskar. So therefore, friends, these are the things that I could share with you about the Sanatana Dharma that is in Indonesia. If we reduce everything into Hinduism, because it's not only philosophy, it is not, there is no, not about, there's no creed, there is no dogma, and it is much more acceptable when we call Sanatan, because it is eternal and it is still living in our everyday lives. You see people from different backgrounds of religions, either they're Christians, either they're Muslims, they are named after Hindu names. Okay, like Sanskrit names. You can find a Muslim with the name Mahendra Datta. You can find Muslims name after like Sri. My aunt's name is Sri. And of course, many are named Devi, Jayanti, many like that. So that is what I can share with you about the Sanatan Dharma in Indonesia. If we're saying that how many are embracing Hindu in Indonesia, that's another different story altogether. But the fact that all Indonesians up until now, they still practice the Sanatan Dharma values. Yes, so that is the thing that I can share with you.
I'll ask the second picture you showed.
Yeah.
I mean, was that a Sanatan festival of harvesting, or is it actually connected with Islam? The reason I'm particularly asking because I saw a lot of people which were sort of in their traditional Indonesian dress, perhaps. But there was also a woman wearing a hijab, so I was not sure if they were all together going for a non-Islamic ritual, or is this a Sanatan ritual? I was very curious about that. Or do Muslim women also go for Sanatan rituals? How does that work?
Yes, this is what's interesting. Actually, these people are Muslims because this is actually not celebrating the harvesting of the rice, like I was mentioning. This is actually in commemorating the birthday of the Prophet Muhammad, but it is done in a Sanatan Dharma tradition. If you see the offerings, it is actually very Sanatan Dharma rituals. The mountains of vegetables, it is actually a significant the significant of Linga itself, because we were Linga worshippers, and Buddha worshippers. So even though we do in Indonesia, they celebrate Muslim traditions, it is still done in the Sanatana Dharma ways. So even women, people with hijabs, they join all these things. For instance, if in weddings, even though there's Muslim weddings, Christian weddings, if it is traditional weddings, we do have the same tradition, like maybe in India. I believe that in India, I don't know which part of India, when the groom steps on a clay pot, yeah, and breaks it. So where I come from, the groom steps instead of a clay pot, they step on eggs, but the significance is the same.
What is the original name of Indonesia?
The origin name of Indonesia is derived from actually the Westerners. We were called Dwipantara. That is our real name. So Dwipantara, Dwi is of our islands, land of the islands. And and where I come from, Java, it was called Java Dwipa. And then in Sumatra, it's called Swarna Dwipa. So we were never called Indonesia. But it is interesting that, during the colonization, there was a newspaper, a local newspaper, and it is headed by a Muslim party. It is called the Hindia Selatan. Hindia Selatan is the south of India. So Indies derives from the Sindhu civilization, from the Sindhu Sunda Saraswati. The name lingers on and becomes Indonesia. But actually it's called Dwipantara.
Hi. My question is that you have touched upon some of the cultural aspects of Indonesia.
Yeah.
What about the food habits of Indonesians? Are they also related in some way to the Sanatan Dharma? And what is the prevalence of vegetarianism in Indonesia?
This is interesting when we talk about vegetarian. if I've studied the history of the food in Indonesia, actually we didn't eat meat. We didn't eat lots of meat because the meat were only dedicated those for the kings, yeah, for the kings, like from hunting and all that. But the lay people, they eat mostly vegetables or maybe a sweetwater fish. The concept of vegetarians are mostly deriving from where I come from, and we eat. There's a saying, they say, oh. Where I come from, they are called Sundanese. If you marry Sundanese, you're so lucky. You don't have to spend a lot. You just leave them in the garden, and they eat everything that's left in the garden. So that is the vegetarian section. Unfortunately, it's not spread throughout all over Indonesia, where we're meat eaters. However, I'm vegetarian, and now a lot of people are starting to become vegetarians. And thanks to COVID, a lot of people are starting to realize that animals are not made for this body. And so the concept of vegetarian itself, it's still not there. But in the very olden times, more vegetables are mostly consumed. Oh yes, I forgot, the newspaper I was mentioning about was called Utusan Hindia. It is a journal that was headed by a Muslim party, actually. That was interesting. Yeah. And many of the spices, especially in Sumatra, it was called then Swana Dwipa. Many of the spices are actually similar to the spices that you find in India. Like we use a lot of turmeric, a lot of turmeric and ginger. I believe there were not many chilies, because chilies were brought by the Europeans actually, but it was more on this spices, and we were actually the land of the spices. That was the first reason why the Europeans came to Indonesia, was to find spices like pepper. The food in certain parts of Indonesia, especially where I come from, we find many similarities that are now like in South India, like rasam. And where I come from, we call it asam, sayur asam. The tamarind taste is there, and the tangy taste, acidic taste is there. It's just the color is a bit different. Rasam is like more of like reddish, but since Indonesia is such a fertile country, many greens, so the color of our soup is a bit greener. So that is about the food. Yeah.
We have a little tidbit about spices. The principal economist with the government of India right now, Sanjeev Sanyal,
Yes.
he lived a lot of his life in Singapore and has been studying the India, Singapore, Indonesia connection, and he writes a lot on the Southeast Asia and India connection, which is thousands of years old. And very interestingly, in one of his lectures on the Indian maritime history, he talks about that, a lot of the spices that were going out of India were actually not grown in India. They were actually grown in Indonesia. And people in South India were traders between Indonesia and giving it to the Arabs.
True. I also remember, I forgot his name. He was the ambassador of India to Indonesia. So his father was a famous Indian historian. So when he was visiting our library, and he found one of his father's book and said, "Oh, you're interested into this history?" And we said, "Yes, of course, we're into that." And then we would like to know more about our cultural roots and the similarities between the two nations. And so he was mentioning, he remembered what his father told him in the story of Ramayan, when Lakshman was hurt. So Hanuman was sent to find this herb, Sanjivani, right? And so he mentioned that actually Sanjivani was found in the so now called the archipelago of Indonesia, since he couldn't find where it was, so he took the whole mountain, the whole hill, and then gave it to Ram. So that was also discovered in our part of the land. See, it has been there for thousands and thousands of years.
With such a large Muslim population, is there freedom to practice Sanatan Dharma values? And even if you like, the Muslims, like you said, are offering prayers which are in sort of ritualistic, perhaps ancient Indonesian value systems, which very often is frowned upon in Islam. How do these coexist? And the related question is there enough freedom of practicing religion without pressure from Islam?
Frankly speaking, it is now not as free as what it used to be. In a tradition, let's just suppose if someone dies, right? In the Muslim tradition, there's no such thing as you have a ceremony after or prayers after the 7th day or the 40th day or the 100th day. So that is from the Sanatan Dharma. We used to practice that a lot, even though until now they still practice it, but it's not as popular as it was before because a lot are becoming very fanatics, and these practices are slowly, getting challenges from the fanatics. But the majority are still practicing, but they're not vocal enough about it. The ones that are vocals are the ones who are giving challenges to be able to practice all this. That is what we're facing right now. It is a pity, and that is why it is very important that we preserve all the Sanatan dharmic values, especially to these native people like the people I was mentioning, the Sunda Wiwitans, the Kaharingans, and there's of course the Balinese, and all other parts of the people throughout Indonesia, Kejawans. They should remain who they are, and because even though some of the people from those parts of the islands have, of course, converted to other religions, but the Sanatan Dharma practice is still happening in their everyday life.
Yeah, Namaste Mayaji.
Namaste, Srinananda.
Thank you for the wonderful session. It's really fascinating to see the world's largest Muslim country accepting and acknowledging their Sanatani ancestry. This just makes me curious about the case of their Indian co-religionists, the Indian Muslims. I just really want to know, like, what has gone downhill for them. But forget about them acknowledging their Hindu ancestry. They somehow want to associate themselves with the Turks, Mongols, and the Arabs.
Oh,
so,
yes.
Yeah, so like, do you see a way to project this link between Indonesia and India and the culture that connects us and binds us, for them to recognize that they are having the same roots as we do?
This is what we have been trying to do, and Guruji has been ceaselessly working on this since the last 30 years. It is very important to remind us Indonesians of our cultural roots. And, we always say that actually India and Indonesia, we're brothers. But of course, the Indonesians sometimes don't really like being called the little brother, because the Western education, starting from, from very at the beginning, has always been depicting this is the greater India, this is the lesser India. So, they resent, we resent that as some sort of calling of little brother, big brother. But actually, we always try to promote these ideas that we are actually one, and we should work together more in so many fields.
So I'll take on Renukaji again, but it'll be nice for all of us to see a little bit of the ashram and what is the ashram about, how do people practice. If you have some pictures, maybe 10 minutes, if you could run us through some of that, will be very nice, or just share.
Yes, I will be writing also maybe some, because I will be writing also our website in here, where you can visit the ashram. You see, the goal of the ashram, one of them is also to propagate about our cultural roots. It is about living in a Sanatani values. So in our ashram in Ubud, we have the first temple that is dedicated to Sri Tripura Sundarima. And the activities are like from the very beginning, in the early mornings, we have like chanting mantras, prayer, mantras, and then followed by Agnihotra, and then also yoga. And the people who are coming to the ashram, interestingly, are not all Hindus. Yeah. So these are people from other parts of other religions. They don't follow Hinduism as religion, but they call themselves believers of indigenous religions. And so they don't mind coming, and they even love doing meditation, doing the chanting, because their ancestors were doing it too. So, there's 15 million people who follow the Sanatani values, and 100%, and they are now, this is the good news, they are now recognized as believers in God, because there were some issues for, I don't know, 22 decades or something, that these people who are practicing Sanatani values 100% were not included, were not included as believers in God, like just animism. But this is the good news now, it's been recognized by the government. So that is what we do in the ashram. People come from different religions, but those people who believe in indigenous beliefs in indigenous religions, they do come there. Yeah. So please do come visit us after the COVID is all over. Please do come to our ashram. We have satsangs, we have bhajans. We do every day. Actually, we do have a program. So like Mondays, we do have yoga. In the evenings, it's throughout the whole day we have an activity. But there's the day of satsang, there's the day of meditation led in English, and then also to local language also in other days, and then special kirtans and bhajans also.
What is the script of Dvipantara? What happened to it? Like we use Devanagari, Brahmanagari writing or long.
Oh, the scriptures.
Yes,
Yeah.
The Indonesian script, what happened?
Yes.
Was it lost? Because I believe we're using in Indonesia, also in Philippines, use the Roman script, the English script to write the language. So was the script lost?
Mm-hmm. It's not lost, actually. In schools, they still do teach the ancient scripts. And we do have several scriptures, like in India, there's from Devanagari in the northern part, and then in Tamil is a different scriptures. So like in Bali, in Java, and in Sunda, we have 3 different scriptures, and it is being taught in schools. But during the independence, so our first president, they decided, okay, we have to find something that is, that can be recognized by everyone, and that is much easier. So they chose Malayu, or Malay language, as the uniting language, and the scripture, that is the Latin scripture. But it is not dead. And now what is good is that in the airports, they start to announce the flights in their local scriptures. Yeah, not scriptures, sorry, scripts. They start to announce the airlines and all that in their local culture, and the roads are now also named or written in the local scripts, the local language. Sorry, the scripts, and then the way they announce in the airports in the local language, and the written in the the roads. It has to be written in the local scripts. It used to be not there, but there is a movement to revive this local wisdom, which is actually good news. And I have put the link of our ashram in the chat box. Our ashram is not only Bali. It is actually the first center is in Jakarta, and also we have another ashram in the outer skirts of Jakarta. We have one in Yogyakarta, and then in Bali. And there's another center also in Bandung in West Java. So we do have several centers.
Do you have any pictures that you may be able to show of the ashram? Would that be possible? Or
I will try to see if I have one, and I will share the screen. And in Indonesian, in the Indonesian language, actually, we have a lot of words that are from the Sanskrit roots also, like kursi, right? It is kursi, and many other things like graha. So we use those words also. Maybe if you hear Indonesian speaking, you will catch certain words that you understand it immediately.
I have one question coming in. Is there any mechanism for continuing social and cultural interaction between the two countries? Or how you may want to answer that. But
We have been actually collaborating with the ICCR, right? Like last time when Deepika ji came, we were performing the Ramayan dance in Delhi. So actually many collaborations that we can be done between the two countries in introducing the local cultures. Either it is through dances that have similarities, like from the Ramayan, from the Mahabharata stories, and the puppet, the puppet shows also, and food and all that, and scriptures, because there are many scriptures that we can connect to one another. There are many ancient scriptures that can connect to one another. And of course, we also have been doing translations of the saints in from Bharat, such as translations of Adi Shankaracharya's works, and that was never been translated in Bahasa Indonesia, right? So we call it Bahasa Indonesia, Indonesian language. And Guruji has written a lot of books. More than 180 books that he has written is actually based on the Sanatan dharmic values, Sanatani values, that has so many correlations between Bharat and Indonesia. And also the local Sanatani scriptures should be translated into English, which we have done, like the book I was showing you in the presentation. It is actually a translation of the local scripture into English and Indonesian. So those are the things that it can be done to reconnect. We've been trying also to connect to the people from government to government also, but from people to people, that we should do this more often to know one another. The scriptures in the books that I showed you, it comes in trilogy. And of course, if you are anybody who are interested to acquire those books, you can Google it actually. And then we are trying to also upload that through ebook, so it's going to be available for all. So in the ashram, we also do sevas also, and adhering to all these principles of Loka Sangraha. What I would like to add also, Rahulji, that we do have a school. It's called One Earth School, and we do also have a boarding school, which is actually a Gurukul. We would like to revive the tradition of Gurukul. So every morning, these children, who, by the way, are not all Hindus as per religion, some of them are Christians and Muslims, they live in the boarding school, in the Gurukul. Starting off very early in the morning, they do chanting, they do chanting, they do Agni Hotra, and then they do yoga. And we emphasize on human values, because all these people forgetting of our cultural roots because it has not been reintroduced to us in our educational system. That's what we have been doing. We started off very small, from 27 children. Now it is like around 170 students, and we all do also adopt orphans, and then the problem is, of course, we always try to cross subsidy, and we've been doing this of what we can. But if people are like willing to sponsor a child, that is also very helpful. So we've been running the school starting from kindergarten. Now it is up to standard 10. So this is what we've been trying to revive the Sanatani and keep the Sanatani values in all our people here in Indonesia.